30 inches is. Boy, that's some shooting. They were experts. Take out the officers. And we have read the newspapers. Father was arrested for pedophilia. The bishop was arrested for stealing. On and on the sad stories go. Take out the officers. Strike the shepherd, scatter the sheep. That's a military tactic. That's a biblical tactic. Many other strategies. I'll talk more about them tomorrow. Every army has to have a commander. Many people are rather relieved to have a Secretary of State who had been a general. You know, General Colin Powell in that position as Secretary of State. A lot of people feel more comfortable these days with someone like that leading in that particular role. It's good to have good leadership. What about our army? Well, we have an army, this spiritual army. God has an army. Jesus is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, but he has appointed a commander. He's appointed a military chief, and I suppose if you like to put titles on things, Bob's always asking me for the titles of my talks, and I don't know them half the time. But if you'd like to put a title on what I'm talking about here, you could say, "Your mama wears combat boots." And you'd pretty much have it. Most places I have to look for a statue of the Blessed Mother. Here I'm not sure where to look. Everywhere. Thankfully, I don't have that problem here. So many beautiful images of Our Lady. The leader of an army. You don't believe me? You read the first and last books of the Bible. The Proto-Evangelium in Genesis 3, third chapter, Genesis. The 12th chapter of the book of Revelation. Oh, you want to talk about war and the leader of an army? First and last books of the Bible. Your mother and mine. She's a great leader. Powerful. With the power of her divine Son. And so, yes, we are at war. Two kinds of war. New war, old war. Both of them significant, and I would dare say both of them very, very related, interconnected. You and I'm sure, love our country. I love my country. I love the United States of America. I want to see my country restored. You know, some of us have struggled. I know, those of you who have been in the pro-life movement and you've suffered, some of you, because of some of the unjust things that have gone on, and I sympathize with you. There are some things that are very wrong in our great country. But you know, when someone you love is sick and suffering very, very much, you don't desert them if you are a true friend. You stick with them. You draw close to them. You love them even more. That's the way God's love is, you know. Our country, more than ever, is in need of patriots. We need to be true to our country. In her essence, this is a great country. The principles upon which this country are built, they are Christian principles, and the Founding Fathers said so. And they also said if we should ever stray from Christian principles, this form of government cannot last. They said that. John Adams and company. They said things like that. They knew what they were talking about. We have to reinvigorate our country. We have to heal our country one person at a time. Most of all, through prayer, but also through our example, by words, by example, yes, charity, patience, and so forth. It's a real battle. Freedom and fear are at war. I thank God every day for the president. I want you, in case you don't, what I'd like you to do is take your mind back to November and imagine where we'd be if the other guy was in there. Now, if you want to be scared, Halloween, if Halloween didn't scare you enough, try that on for size. God help us. You remember, less than a year ago, or a year ago, never mind, we're in November already. Can't say that anymore. A year ago, this month, remember where we were. We couldn't hardly elect a president. We didn't know if we had a president. We didn't know what was going to happen. The confusion, polarization, 50-50 split. And in the middle of the whole mess, one day, a woman, a Mexican woman, said to her husband, let's go down to my country and pray for the president. And so they went down there, and that woman's husband prayed something like this: and I hereby consecrate my brother's presidency to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And his name was Jeb Bush. And guess what the day was when the Supreme Court decision came down? December 12th, the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. One of the first talks the president gave, he made reference to St. Therese, the little flower. And the words he used were, a great saint of our times. And then he went on to give St. Therese as an example. And he proved himself to be a friend. Of course, listen, nobody can please everybody all the time, especially a president. Can't do it. And I know he has his faults, like all of us, but we're very fortunate. It could have been a lot worse. And so keep praying, but at least be encouraged. Very often we lose heart, we become discouraged because things don't go the way that we would like them to go. But thank God for little favors and big ones too, because God heard the prayers, I think, of a lot of good people. And so now we have very strong leadership. Who knows where we're headed? Into the uncertainty. Yes, freedom and fear are at war. I want you to remember something. Whenever you hear that by now famous saying that the president used, remember what freedom is. We live in a free country. But what is freedom? Is freedom being able to do whatever you want to do? No. Oh, no. Freedom is not being able to do whatever you want to do. That's license. And there is a radical and essential difference between freedom and license, and you don't want to get this one wrong. Because if freedom and fear are at war, you better have authentic freedom. Because if you have a vacuous, specious pretext to freedom, if you have the opposite of freedom, if you have license rather than authentic freedom, your house is built on sand and it's going to collapse. And if freedom is at war with fear, it better be authentic freedom. Freedom is the power to do what we ought to do. Freedom is the power to choose the good and the true and the beautiful. That is freedom, and that will vanquish fear every time. But if your concept of freedom is really license, that's rotten. And fear will come out on top in that battle every single time. Indeed, freedom and fear are at war. Freedom has to be united with truth. There is no freedom outside of the truth. The Holy Fathers taught that for years. No authentic human freedom outside of the truth. If you are truly my disciples, you will abide in my word, then you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free with the glorious freedom of the children of God. That freedom is rooted in God, who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Freedom and truth are unity. And because of that, fear, terror, evil cannot triumph over authentic freedom. But we must make sure that our concept of freedom is real and authentic. Yes, indeed, we now have a new kind of war. But it's rooted, prefigured, conditioned, and determined by a very old kind of war. Yes, freedom and fear are at war. My brothers and sisters, you and I are called to be soldiers on the battlefront. We are called to be strong in prayer and virtue. We're called to exercise ourselves in spiritual training. We're called to know our weapons and our tactics. We're called to follow our leader. Follow our mother, who teaches us how to follow her son. And then I promise you something. I promise you something right here, right now, solemnly before Almighty God. I promise you, when this is over, when the battle is stilled and time gives way to eternity, and you and I stand before God, you're going to hear these words. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master's house. God love you.